and welcome to bexbugoutsurvivor tailoring your Bergen series. I've already tailored on some utility pouches, the triple 1, 2, 3 to the outside of the Bergen. However, if I turn this around, just here on the hip belt, I want to tailor on another utility. Now these are for water, just water bottles, and at the rear on mine I house my jet boil, some rations, maybe a Bergen cover on the back. I don't want the weight of the water pulling back on the pack, so I just need some spare utility pouches. I happen to have another 2 of these. These utility pouches are pretty good for carrying water rather than the full set, such as the beaker and the cook pot, because I'll be carrying the jet boil in mine. Just the water bottle in that. And the first thing, as usual, is to remove all this. You can hand pick it with a seam ripper, but I use a little razor blade. I'm only stitching through this little edge here of the ribbon, and it'll need to be stitched on the inside here. So lift the lid open to stitch, and stitch under this ribbon, so it's going through the MTP material itself. On the hip pad, it's going to be sewn to this ribbon here on the hip pad, and down here is another ribbon, and I can put a couple of box stitches down here at the bottom. Now I'm placing mine quite far back on the actual hip belt rather than fitting it very far forward, and in that way it's out of the way. Okay, let's make a start. I'll be using a 150 denier waxed thread. Tough as old boots, that's what you're going to need. I have 2 needles, quite large, similar to leather craft. I've already loaded one side, and on the other side of the thread I'm going to load another needle, because I'll be using a saddle stitch. It's going to be neat, strong. That through there, and then the tip of the needle goes through the middle of the thread and over the end. Pull tight. So what I have is a length of thread with 2 needles on. It's just a case of sewing it on. So I'll be alternating the needles through the exact same hole, bringing it out, sew lower down, through the same hole, pull tight, go lower, through the same hole, pull tight. Saddle stitch, very, very easy to master. First, I need to remove these pals and the molly webbing. 2 ways to remove all this gubbin here is a seam ripper or a razor blade. I'm going to start off with a seam ripper and remove all this stitching between the pals. Alternatively, you can reach for a razor blade. If you use a razor blade, be careful, but just use a slicing motion behind the actual stitching. I do not want to go through the pouch. Once I've pulled the webbing to reveal the stitches, I just slice very carefully. It's only a 2-minute job. Keep using the slicing motion. The next task is some scissors, little nail scissors. I find you can do quite accurate cutting with, and just take your time to get as close to the ribbon as you can, just to take the actual webbing out. Don't cut into the actual ribbon though. Everything you do is worth taking some time over. Do it neat. It's one of them jobs you'll only be doing it once. This will not be seen. It'll be actually on your hip, and the actual strap itself, take close to the pouch without going through the pouch. Nice, really neat. And with this being nylon, you can always get a cigarette lighter to that if you're really anal about it. Other than that, just remains to tidy up some loose threads. Which can also be done from the inside here. There you have it. All them threads are out. Okay, we're there. Not too painful. I always keep these little bits, come in handy. So the exact positioning of the pouch onto the hip belt is thusly for me. It comes to the edge here behind the hip. So it should look something like that. I am actually sewing along that in order to keep a straight, neat line. I'll actually follow the size of the stitching as well. So a little time consuming, but worth it. If you start doing big stitches to speed the job up, it looks terrible. The existing stitching of the belt, marry that up with the existing stitching under the pouch. So let's get the first stitch in. Always start from behind. A thimble would be great here. And bring it into the existing stitching. And you can see the needle has come out exactly on this stitch line, ensuring I have an equal length of thread on either side of the needle. Pull that tight, and the needle has come out, as you can see, on the stitch line of the actual hip belt itself. You can see I've got a good stitch measurement keeping to the original. So as needle A comes out, which I have here, needle B needs to go through this same hole. Switch to needle B, and let's bring that through almost the same stitch line here and ensure it does come out the other side on the hip belt. The first two stitches are in, and as you can see they are small. Needle B comes back through, and once it has, needle A will come out the same hole. Once your first couple of stitches are in, it really does become a lot easier. The key to good stitch work for your Bergens is consistency, so small stitches. So there you go, there's another stitch in. So try and get these stitches straight and try and get them small. It'll guarantee its own neatness. And that has come out exactly on the existing stitch line. At the moment I have two needles on the same side. I've moved forward ever so slightly to this existing stitch and sew through. so I am guaranteed it's going to be quite straight. Switch needles, follow the existing stitch line. Once you're up and away with this, it goes quickly, as you can see. But never ever time yourself how long a job is going to take. It is going to take as long as it's going to take. That's another key to getting things neat. Don't rush at it. If you get bored, put it down, come back to it later. But always maintain being neat. There's no reason at all to do sloppy work. Let's zoom in and have a look. If you do get bored, don't be tempted to put big stitches in. Put your project down, come back to it the following day, come back to it in an hour or so. I always need to make sure that the same thread is making the forward stitch. This is needle B on my right, and this will form the new stitch which has come through the belt and now needs to go into the pouch, which is come out the pouch on this side, and you can see it's right on the existing stitch line, so I've got something pretty straight to follow. Now you have your thimble, you can push the needle through, and that was the needle that was formerly on the right. Let's switch over to the needle on the left. So long as it goes through the same stitch, we're okay. You can see how close these really are together. Through the same stitch hole, all the way through to the other side, and the former left will become the right, and the right will make the new stitch. So the former left needle is now come through on the right. Nip that up tight. For me, the needle on the right always forms the new stitch, and I'm keeping them really small, close together. Now to pull this needle through, part of the tools which will really help are a pair of pliers. Really helps in this case to pull that through. Part of the tools of the trade. Here's the gap I have from stitch to stitch. Needle A is going through that same hole. Okay, all done. Apart from 2 lots of stitches at the very bottom where I'm going to put an X stitch. I'll leave those X stitches as an outro to this video. But let's look at one of the finished ones. Let's talk about how we use them, and more importantly, when we use these. There on my hips, that is what I'll use to cook and to make hot drinks with. On the side of the Bergen is water on the go, hydration bladder. On the back of the Bergen, these are very different pouches when I made the triples. These have a liner at the top, keep all the dust out. The ones on the front here are the Mark IVs, which have a rubberized coating. So I have 1 litre, 2 litres, 3 litres in the hydro, which is on the side here. In total, a 5 litre water carry. The bottom of the pouch was secured with an X stitch there and there. That is all. That's all that's holding it. And I went round a few times, literally across like this. This one here I haven't done, and I just need to stitch there and there. It has gone straight into this existing stitch. You can hardly tell which is mine and which is theirs. To see the stitching on the inside, I would need to pull the bottle out. Mine are these that are resting on top of the existing stitch. Main access drinking water is through a tube, camelback, and I've sewn a sleeve just for water on the go. 2 litre reserve that I don't even feel. These are my reserve waters. So if you're crossing vast areas of plain where you know there's not going to be any water, I've got reserves. The tips for this: be consistent, keep the stitches small, follow an existing line. If you haven't got an existing line, use a ruler and a pen and draw yourself a line and follow it. Maybe there'll be more modifications to this Bergen, or maybe this one is ready to pass on to someone else. But until next time, take care, and I will see you out there. Happy trails.